there was a middle-aged man dressed in Zhongshan suit, smoking strong Turkish tobacco in a club, recounting a story. The beginning of this story had a somewhat eerie tone. Let the author lift the curtain of this story with the tip of a pen and introduce it to the readers. This is a cold night in early December, and it is already past midnight. In a spacious bedroom, elegant furniture is arranged. The warm waterbed, dim lights, and the slight scent of lily perfume in the air create a comfortable feeling of early spring. In this warm house, there are 4 people chatting cheerfully. 2 of the 4 individuals are the hosts here. The host, Li Ruilin, is about 30 years old, with his actions and speech displaying a demeanor of a petite bourgeoisie. The hostess, Pei Hua, is only 24 or 25 years old. Although her attire is fashionable, there is still a hint of old-fashioned restraint in her attitude, revealing that she is a woman from the countryside who has not been breathing the air of the city for long. The third person is a tall and skinny young man with rather handsome features, but his complexion is very pale, without a trace of blood. His nervous eyes often show a contemplative expression, and his speech is soft, as quiet as a woman's. Looking at his slender fingers, it can be seen that he is an intelligent person. In addition, there is also a young female servant with a strong and healthy figure. The rosy cheeks do not need to be painted with rouge, and they naturally show a vibrant color. A pair of bewitching eyes. She is the only confidant of the mistress here. Her name is Fengxia. Master Li Ruilin and this thin and nervous individual Zhu Long formed a close friendship due to their dual relationship as fellow countrymen and neighbors. Mr. Zhu, due to his close proximity, has almost become a nightly guest here, as intimate as a family member. An hour ago, Mr. and Mrs. Li Ruilin and this Zhu Long watched a movie at the Grand Shanghai Theater. The film of the day, originally titled A Mummy's Hand, should be translated literally as a zombie's hand or even as ghost hand, but in that cinema, it was given a more elegant name, called Return Soul Fragrance. Look at the original title of this movie. Needless to say, it is definitely a horror film. The film tells the story of a zombie in an Egyptian pyramid who, through a mysterious power, has managed to sustain his terrifying life for over 2,000 years. This old and hideous creature, probably due to enduring too much loneliness, and because there is no mirror in the tomb corridor to reflect his face, once he sees someone of the opposite sex, he starts pursuing them passionately. In short, the story of this film is similar in outline to another film starring Karloff called The Mummy. As for consciousness, of course, it's not something to talk about, but the overall set design, sound effects, cinematography angles, and the lifeless makeup, etc., can certainly give people a considerable level of excitement. Mr. and Mrs. Li Ruilin, who have always been very timid, especially Pei Hua, are even more afraid of ghosts. However, humans have a natural need for excitement. The more they fear ghosts, the more they seek terrifying stimulation. Therefore, when they returned home, they were still enthusiastically discussing the story in the film. Pei Hua, who grew up in the countryside, had a simple mind. After watching this horror movie, she felt satisfied and scared at the same time. She turned to her husband and Zhu Long and said in surprise, "Hey, how come even foreign places have zombie ghosts?" Due to the raising of this question, the discussion in this group's meeting shifted to zombies and ghosts. Nervous Zhu Long didn't seem interested in the topic. However, to liven things up, that evening he also recounted several stories about ghosts. Even the maid Feng Xia, excitedly, shared a bizarre ghost story. She said, in her hometown of Suzhou, there was a famous malicious lawyer who typically used his skills to harm others. Once, he set up a trap and took the life of an innocent person, but in return he received a large sum of money. For the next 3 years, nothing happened. However, one evening 3 years later, after finishing a book at a small tea house and walking back along a desolate road, he felt someone closely following him. In the dim moonlight, he turned around and saw that it was none other than the ghost of the person he had killed 3 years ago. The ghost seemed quite polite, revealing a gentle smile under the moonlight, as if greeting an old friend after a long absence. The malicious lawyer's soul seemed to turn into countless strands of cold air, escaping from his pores. Trembling, he ran straight home with the sound of footsteps quietly following him. Upon returning home, the lawyer found himself unable to speak a single word, and that night he fell seriously ill and died. After his death, his family discovered a black and blue handprint on his chest, with the outlines of fingers and palm very clear. It was evident that the cruel lawyer had suffered a lightning strike from that ghostly hand. As the little girl spoke eloquently, her eyes showed a deep terror. However, she was a very articulate speaker, and she told the ghost story in a very vivid way, completely controlling the emotions of the listeners. Finally, she pointed out that what she said was a first-hand account because the home of the evil litigant was not far from where they lived. "It's getting late." When the last sentence of the ghost story was finished, the clock struck calmly twice. The conversation stopped and there was a dead silence all around. The location was at the end of Jing'an Temple Road, which was the quietest residential area. The village here was aptly named Jing Village. The whole village had 15 identical small cottages. The night's guest, Zhu Long, lived in number 4 of the same village as Li Ruilin, who lived in number 13. The distance between them was only 8 houses. After the group discussion dispersed, Zhu Long hurriedly said goodbye and left the maid Feng Xia tidied up and also returned to her bedroom at the back of the 3-story building. Li Ruilin went to bed first. Pei Hua, the housewife, quietly removed her makeup. She listened to the northwest wind outside the window gradually intensifying and saw that it was already lightly snowing. This evening, this timid woman, having watched that terrifying movie and listened to the chilling story of the ghost hand, looked around the bedroom and felt it unusually empty, more so than usual. Lately, she and her husband had been sharing the same bed but not the same pillow because she had been suffering from a cough. The doctor said it was an early stage of pneumonia, so to avoid contagion, they slept at opposite ends. But this evening, before going to bed, she asked her husband to switch directions, so that if she couldn't sleep in the middle of the night, she could easily turn on the dressing table lamp. She fell asleep. Strangely, a sense of unease washed over her entire body. That horror film and the terrifying conversation seemed to have liquefied and injected into her veins, so that every drop of her blood was mixed with a terrifying component, tossing and turning. She just couldn't fall into a deep sleep. In other words, she simply dared not fall asleep. In just half an hour, she turned the desk lamp on and off 4 or 5 times. At the same time, she reached out and gently nudged her husband awake several times. Finally, she annoyed her husband. She dared not to call him again. "I can't sleep, it's so annoying." Helpless, she quietly got up and secretly took 2 of her husband's sedative pills. The medicine in these pills is quite strong, maybe half an hour. She felt her eyelids gradually getting heavy like they were being weighed down by lead. She remembered that the last time she twisted off the lamp, her arms were already feeling limp and weak. The ancient saying goes, doubt breeds suspicion. There are also psychologists who say, apart from the 5 senses, humans possess a mysterious 6th sense that can anticipate unexpected events. The terror Pei Hua felt before going to bed tonight, is it a product of suspicion, or does it belong to the mysterious premonition of the latter? I don't know how long I had been asleep, maybe an hour, perhaps 2? In the darkness, there was something that startled her awake. It was a hand, gently caressing her neck. In her drowsy state, she had forgotten that she and her husband did not sleep together. In her semi-consciousness, her initial thought was that it was her husband caressing her. She wanted to reach out and grab hold of the hand, but her body felt so weak and powerless, she couldn't even move a single strand of hair. And then, something horrifying happened. In the span of just 20 seconds or so, for the second time, she suddenly felt something touching her neck. It was still a hand so cold, even colder than ice. A ghost hand. A strong sense of terror, like an electric shock, surged through her entire brain. She was terrified, but at the same time completely awake. She distinctly felt the fingers of that hand, not only cold and stiff, but also with sharp claws on the fingertips. Terrifying memories immediately linked together. The faces of the zombies in the pyramid swirled before her eyes, and the dreadful ghost hand that had struck down the evil litigant seemed to be close to her chest. She broke out in a cold sweat, wanting to scream but unable to make a sound. Is this a nightmare? Or is it something real? She could clearly hear her husband snoring loudly behind her. Sometimes, she could even hear the ticking of the small table clock, sounding in her ears, so that an unknown amount of time passed, and she felt that every minute seemed longer than a year. Finally, she fainted. On an extremely terrifying night, it passed like this, but in this bedroom, it remained as quiet as ever, without any changes. The next day, Li Ruilin woke up and noticed that his wife's expression was different. Her face was as red as fire, and she was murmuring incoherently. When he touched her forehead, it was burning hot. He woke her up in alarm, and she fearfully and intermittently recounted the story of the previous night. 1 hour later, the doctor arrived. After inquiring about the cause of the illness and conducting an examination, the doctor declared that it was due to excessive fear. The patient needed rest and should not be exposed to further stimulation. The doctor said someone as timid as her should not watch horror movies anymore or listen to any stories about ghosts. During the diagnosis, another strange thing happened. The doctor noticed a strong scent other than the fragrance of perfume on the patient's bed. He found a piece of medicated cotton next to the patient's pillow from which the pungent scent was emanating. "Oh, chloroform," exclaimed the doctor in surprise. But the doctor is not a detective. He prescribed medication and then hurried away. At this time, the uninvited guest Zhu Long, who did not need an invitation, had of course already arrived. He and Li Ruilin were puzzledly studying the strange events of the previous night, thinking about it from every angle, but unable to come to a suitable conclusion. "You're a clever person, please guess this dumb riddle," said the master to Zhu Long. "Haha, for such strange events, we really need to consult Sherlock Holmes," Zhu Long replied sarcastically. "Unfortunately, there is no Sherlock Holmes in China. Although China does not have Holmes, it has the great Hawthorne." After such questioning, that clever friend seems to have aroused a curiosity, urging the master to hand over this bizarre calculation to the great detective Hawthorne. The Lord-style Li Ruilin is non-negotiable. So, Zhu Long found the phone number and jokingly dialed a call. In Zhu Long's opinion, he thought that the great detective must be very busy and have no time to deal with such trivial matters. However, unexpectedly, a rushed and brief voice came from the receiver, "I'll be there in a moment." The dispensary returned, and Fengxia served the patient. The master and Zhu Long nervously awaiting the development of this event. The servants downstairs were discussing it one after another. The commotion in Villa 13 presents an opportunity for the author to briefly introduce the master's background during this interval. The terrifying overnight drama, we can say, is rooted in several decades ago. Therefore, to uncover the roots of this story, we should start with the previous generation of Li Ruilin's account here. Please pay attention to the following narrative. Li Ruilin's great-grandfather, a native of Chongming, Jiangsu province, named Dan Jia, once served as the Commissioner of Customs in Jiangsu province and the Commissioner of Military Affairs in the same province. Among many officials in the late Qing dynasty, he had the farthest vision and the greatest ambition. He supervised the construction of the fortress batteries at Wuzhangkou. He invented a mixture of glutinous rice and lust to build the platform of the batteries. Despite the use of the most powerful explosives, it still cannot be completely destroyed. In his later years, he was sent on missions to England, France, and Germany, where he stayed the longest in Germany. As he was a close friend of Li Hongzhang, upon his return to China, he proposed a great suggestion to Li, which was not adopted. Consequently, he retired and devoted himself to teaching his grandchildren. Li Dongjia has a short and fat stature with a dark and shiny face. His neck is very short and thick, giving the impression that he has no neck. He has small eyes like most people from the rural areas. As he is the only high-ranking official on this small island, there were many mysterious legends surrounding him at the time. Firstly, they say that this Li Dongjia is the black tiger star from the heavens who has descended to earth. There have been people who claim to have personally witnessed a black tiger appearing in his study while he was taking a nap. This legend is quite amusing. Secondly, when Li Dongjia returned from Germany, the people of Chongming Island all believed that the diamond hidden by the Li family could be measured by a bucket of rice. As for the latter legend, not only the villagers believed this, but the Li family themselves also believed it. For many years, the descendants have always cherished a deep yearning for the brilliance of diamonds. However, to this day, the descendants of the Li family have not found a diamond in their ancestors' legacy that can scratch glass. When Li Dongjia died, he was 61 years old, the year of the defeat in the Jiawu War. When the heartbreaking news of defeat reached the small island at the mouth of the Yangtze River, the poor old man clapped his hands and called out loudly, and then he suffered a fatal illness. His family surrounded his bed and asked if he had any last words, but he could not speak. He only pointed with his weak finger at his nose, then at his ear, and laboriously from his numb tongue, he spelled out the word, death, several times. Finally, he murmured the words de Tong, which was the name of his grandson, who was the father of Li Ruelin. At the time, the family thought he was deaf and couldn't hear the questions from the crowd, but from his expression, he appeared very anxious, indicating there was something extremely important he had yet to say. Helplessly, they reluctantly placed a piece of paper and a pen into his weak hand, but he only managed to write a single word, deaf. Due to his trembling fingers, he wrote the word so hastily it resembled seal script. Moreover, the characters for a deaf were written very far apart, requiring careful scrutiny to discern what word it was. Finally, the poor old man sighed heavily, threw down his pen and died. At his death, there seemed to be a kind of regret on his face, indicating that he still kept a serious secret in his heart, but it was sealed off by the Grim Reaper and could not be disclosed. This secret has been buried with the deceased in the layers of the earth for a long time. Only when our most intelligent detective Hawthorne arrived was it revealed to the world. Another hour passed, and the great detective's toes touched the steps of Jingsuan 13. On that day, he worked alone and did not carry the necessary package. Stepping onto the second-floor bedroom, many pairs of eyes simultaneously fell on him. They all felt that, except for his pair of eyes. The nationally renowned great detective's appearance was not particularly remarkable. His suit jacket was too old, and his leather shoes were not very shiny. On his forehead, the relief carved by time was clearly visible. A few white hairs had already appeared on his temples, which was evidently the result of excessive consumption of brain cells over the years. The investigation began, and the master first reported the strange events of the previous night. Hawthorne's questions were so numerous and varied that he even inquired into the deeds of the ancestors of the Li family in great detail. He seemed particularly interested in the circumstances surrounding the master's great-grandfather's death. Next, he inquired about the number of people in the house and their living conditions. He muttered to himself, maids, old mother, third floor, coachman, chef, ground floor. What a comfortable little family. The detective's cigarette was constantly lit and extinguished, sticking to his lips and dangling down. He wasn't smoking, he was actually burning it. Occasionally, he hummed a few lines of the old La Paloma song quietly. The brain of a special product started the gears. He went over what the master had said in his mind. He thought, undoubtedly, last night someone broke into this bedroom, attempting to smother the person in this bed with chloroform, but for some reason, they didn't succeed. What was the purpose of this intruder? Theft? Murder? Theft is unlikely, as there are many valuable ornaments on the dressing table, not one missing. Murder, a joke. Since this person's fingers were close to the objects of interest, he certainly wouldn't have thought of using chloroform to knock the person out before resorting to foul play. So, what was the intruder's intention? He thought again. According to Pei Hua, the housewife, she was completely awakened by the second cold hand. From this, one thing can be known, that is, the first hand was no different from an ordinary person, so she was not alarmed. Furthermore, it can be known that there were obviously more than one person who entered this bedroom last night, but two. Why is the hand of the second person so cold? As an insider, with the room having a heater on, this phenomenon should not exist. He thought, unless there are two possibilities, this would be the case. The first is that he just came in from outside, as it snowed overnight and the weather is very cold. The second possibility is that he suffers from neurasthenia and anemia. On cold days, his hands and feet will never warm up. About the above speculation, a conclusion is reached. In the bedroom overnight, there were a total of 2 distinguished guests, one from within and one from outside. To be clear, the first hand belongs to an insider, the second hand, cold as a ghost, belongs to an outsider. Moreover, this outsider may be a sufferer of anemia. With such a big fuss going on, what's the purpose of it all? We should uncover the intentions behind this darkness. Thinking about this, Hawthorne looked up and walked a circle in the room. His sharp gaze lingered on 2 faces, one red and one white, for a few seconds. Time has been wasted. The great detective smokes, paces with hands behind his back, hums softly to a tune. Without having uttered half a word of wisdom, the host is becoming somewhat impatient. Please ask Mr. Hua, was last night's incident caused by a human or a ghost? Master Li Ruelin broke the silence with this boring and childish question. It's too bizarre, seems somewhat like a ghostly prank, Hawthorne said mockingly. Truly a ghost, then it will never find me, the owner suddenly said such a sentence. Why? Hawthorne raised his eyes. In my head and neck, there are ancestral treasures hanging. Llewellyn answered. Next to him was a dry cough. That was the pale Zhulong. Ah! Treasure! In the neck, Hawthorne's two eyes flashed with a kind of flame, tightly shooting onto his owner's face. A new idea stabbed into the detective's mind. It was said that the overnight hosts, the husband and wife, had swapped sleeping positions. In the darkness, the hands touched the wife's neck twice. Could the strange hands have been exploring the neck of the host, Li Rui's hen, and accidentally touched the wife instead? A faint light flickered in the mind of the great detective. Excuse me, what treasure is that? This was the first excited voice the great detective uttered upon entering. It looks like a very ordinary and worthless thing, but I have been wearing it since I was young and have never encountered any evil spirits. The owner's tone was very solemn. Could I ask for some advice? This interrogative sentence clearly contains a fervent expectation. What's wrong with that? It's just a small dragon made of foreign gold, very roughly crafted by hand, but this thing can ward off evil spirits. Dragon. This word again touched a certain part of Hawthorne's brain storage. On one hand, Llewellyn was unbuttoning his clothes and took out an extremely fine gold chain from around his neck. The gold chain was slightly thicker than a double-stranded cotton thread, and there was a goose-yellow net bag on the chain, about 2 inches long and half an inch wide. The bag must be holding the mysterious little golden dragon. The master's action of taking the net bag displayed an excessive solemnity. He pinched one end of the gold chain with 2 fingers, just like a naughty child tying up a beetle with a piece of cotton thread, while also fearing the beetle would jump up and bite him from the other end of the thread. Hawthorne was about to reach out and take the small net bag, but the owner's hand hesitated slightly. Pulling back a bit, Zhulong interjected, saying, Mr. Hawthorne, you have quite the honor. As far as I know, our brother Llewellyn has never let anyone's hand touch this little treasure of his in many years. You're the first. I am honored beyond measure. In that case, I must wash my hands, Hawthorne said with a cold sarcasm, as he took one end of the gold from the host's hand with 2 fingers, mimicking the host's ridiculous gesture. He asked, the washroom? The master seemed very sympathetic to Hawthorne's suggestion to wash his hands, and he directed him. Hawthorne immediately turned into the rear of the bedroom. After a moment, he came out of the washroom and shouted happily, Mr. Lee, I not only washed my hands, but I also took a bit of your perfume and sprinkled it on my hands, so I could enjoy it as a fragrant hand wash. He spoke playfully, with a hint of nervousness in his clear eyes. He freed the mysterious little treasure from the silk bag. It was a small, flat dragon made of 18-karat gold, less than 2 inches long, with a slightly curved body and a 5-part tail with 4 small teeth near the end of each side, resembling dragon legs perhaps. The craftsmanship of this thing was indeed crude, but it possessed a quaint pattern beauty. Hawthorne played with it repeatedly for a long time, meditating in silence. This strange little thing, passed down from ancestors to descendants so solemnly, must have some use other than the so-called laughable exorcism, right? Li Dongjia's past, as soon as it was heard, quickly stirred in Hawthorne's mind. He thought, the old man who spoke repeatedly of the word dragon before he died while the black tiger star descends. Could he have been referring to this small object, which was mistakenly understood by the crowd at the time as the word deaf? It is quite possible. Look, this peculiar little item is clearly a foreign product, brought back to the country by the old man himself. If this thing does not have any significant importance, why is it being solemnly passed down to his descendants? However, when the old man was dying and said the word dragon, he clearly pointed to his own ears. And what he wrote bore the character for a deaf, but the structure of the deaf character and are quite far apart. Could it be that his original intention was to write the characters for a dragon and ear? If the above speculation is correct, then what explanation is there for the extra character? This is a crucial question that needs to be answered. Next, let's take a look at this golden dragon shape ornament. It looks a lot like a key. Where there is a key, there must be a lock to go with it. But where is that lock? And what kind of secrets might be hidden inside that lock? Could it be that the elusive diamond, which has remained unfound for decades, is hidden in these secrets? Perhaps the key to this enigma lies in the word ear. Anyway, one thing can be believed, which is that the person in the darkness overnight must have already solved this puzzle. You see, he mistakenly thought that the owner, Li Ruelin, was still sleeping in his original place, so the hand in the darkness only searched in the mistress's neck with the intention of stealing this little golden dragon. This may be a confirmed fact. After the above reasoning, in the darkness, it seems that there is already a glimmer of dawn flickering. Finally, Hawthorne returned the mysterious little treasure to its original owner. At the same time, he firmly proposed, "All right. I want to inspect every room here." The master promised to accompany personally. Hawthorne asked the others to stay where they were and not to disturb, so as not to be distracted. The rooms on the first and second floors have all been inspected, but it seems that there is nothing that can catch the attention of this great detective. At the same time, the owner, with a bewildered look, stares at the detective, not knowing the purpose behind his magical actions. Finally, I reached the third floor. In the front part here, there's a large room, arranged somewhat like a sitting room, with dark curtains hanging, and the lighting is dim. Apart from chairs and tables, there are many ancient Chinese porcelain pieces and foreign artworks. There's a large mirror frame on the floor, containing a nearly 10-foot-tall oil painting depicting the side portrait of Lady Li Dongjia, which is the work of a German painter. Additionally, in a small glass case adorned with rosewood, there's a brightly colored headdress, the crystallization of Lady Li's lifelong achievements. The most conspicuous thing in the room is something resembling a shrine on a rosewood desk against the wall. This thing is quite large, and in front of the shrine, there's an ancient bronze censer with the remnants of incense. Because the shrine is draped with yellow silk curtains, it's not clear what is being worshipped inside. Hawthorne took a step forward, intending to reach out and lift the curtain, but a voice stopped him in his tracks. "Oh, please don't touch it," the owner exclaimed in a panicked whisper behind Hawthorne. "Why?" Hawthorne suddenly turned his head, confusion shining in his eyes as he silently uttered this question. The master apologized and explained, and the explanation was so mysterious. He said, "In this shrine, there are two bronze statues, one large and one small, dedicated to his great-great-grandfather, Li Dongjia. These were crafted by a famous German artisan and brought back to the country by his great-great-grandfather himself. These statues had a peculiar aura even during his great-great-grandfather's lifetime. Perhaps because his great-great-grandfather's constellation was too vast, anyone who touched these statues would inevitably encounter misfortune. There was once a person who, due to disbelief in this phenomenon, soon after broke a leg. Incidents like these are not limited to just one." Hawthorne listened, unable to help but feel solemn. The air and light around were so quiet and dark, making the mysterious atmosphere in the room even stronger. Being in it, one would feel an unusual sensation. Even someone as stolid as Hawthorne would not be an exception. Suddenly, his body swayed and he staggered backwards, collapsing heavily onto a sofa with a terrifying change in his gaze. "Mr. Hua. What's the matter?" the master asked in surprise. "I feel dizzy. Could you find me some peppermint pills?" "I'm really sorry." Hawthorne reached out to press his forehead, his voice trembling. "Haha. You must not believe what I say, right?" Words spoken by the master's inner self. A sudden rush of footsteps, then he went downstairs. Here, Hawthorne sprang more suddenly from the sofa than his master, and, going up to the shrine, drew aside the curtain. Within it there were indeed two bronze figures, the larger of the two being a half-length portrait, wearing a crown and a garland of flowers, and adorned with a string of pearls across the chest. This statue, about 30 inches high, had a lifelike expression, naturally displaying a majestic demeanor. It was evident that the words executed by a famous sculptor were not false. But in this hasty moment, Hawthorne had no intention of admiring the beautiful lines of the bronze statue. He only quickly and agilely peeked into the two ears of the larger bronze statue, and in a feeling of unexpected surprise, he noticed that there was some movement in the ears, which could only be perceived by using both his hand and eye, and perhaps not by just his eye alone. As a result of this extraordinary discovery, Hawthorne's mind immediately formed a fantastic picture. He seemed to have been transported back decades, witnessing with his own eyes the dying old man, groaning and panting on his sickbed. It also seemed as if he personally witnessed the old man raising his trembling, powerless fingers, pointing to his own nose, and then pointing to his own ears, struggling to produce the following statement. "Descendants, you shall use a specially crafted small golden dragon to insert into the ear of my large bronze statue. Then, you will discover a significant secret that I have hidden. Remember, remember. The last words Li Dongjia wanted to express before dying were probably something like this, or at least similar. But alas! Under the control of death, his tongue was numb, his gestures were also performed unclearly, so his efforts to utter the word dragon were misunderstood as deafness since he was pointing to his ears at the same time. Furthermore, the 3 words big bronze statue he intended to say were also misinterpreted as calling out the name of his grandson, Datong, due to his weak voice. In this way, the old man's chest was buried with the secret hidden for several decades below the Earth's surface. The dark curtain gradually lifted, but what kind of secret is hidden within the large bronze statue? This further exploration, however, was interrupted by the footsteps on the stairs. Master Li Ruilin hurriedly returned to the 3rd floor, handed a peppermint lozenge and a packet of Dragon Tiger Mandan to Hawthorne, and inquired about him with concern. The great detective accidentally ingested several unnecessary pills. He sheepishly said, "It's okay, thank you. It's an overuse of the brain phenomenon, but I'm much better now." At the same time, he declared to the master he had found a clue to the strange events that occurred here last night, but there are 1 or 2 points that still need to be proven. He promised to deliver the answers in 3 days. A curiosity drove Li Ruilin, and he wanted to ask about the general situation of this strange matter. But having read many detective novels, he knew that all great detectives had a set of affected mannerisms, so he restrained himself. He respectfully saw off the great detective and leisurely left. Upon returning upstairs, his wife Pei Hua was groaning. His good friend Zhulong, along with the maid Fengxia, were showing signs of anxiety. Hawthorne promised to come back in 3 days, but in reality, he came on the 2nd day, earlier than expected. Strangely, he didn't come during the day but in the middle of the night, and he didn't come in a formal manner, but rather secretly. What is particularly strange is the circumstances surrounding the return of the great detective. After 2 o'clock in the late night, Hawthorne, at the back door of number 13, coughed dryly while looking up, and the light in the small window behind the 3-story building immediately responded to this cough by illuminating. In less than 2 minutes, the back door of number 13 opened slightly, and a ghostly shadow, in the crack of the door, peeked its head for a moment. Then Hawthorne followed this ghostly figure closely into the house, moving gently. The reader of this probe may have already guessed that she is the female attendant Fengxia. 2 shadows furtively searched their way up the stairs in the darkness. They covered 3 flights of stairs before one of the shadows began to tremble. At the door outside the front room on the 3rd floor, the magical great detective took out a lily key, effortlessly opened the door. He let Fengxia enter the dark room and gently closed the door. Immediately, he familiarly felt for the lamp switch and turned on the light. The curtains in the room were tightly drawn, and not a single beam of light leaked out. The great detective was as relaxed as if he were back at his own mansion. He picked out the most comfortable sofa to sit on, lit a cigarette, and puffed away leisurely. Furthermore, he gestured to Fengxia as if entertaining a close friend, saying, "Please, have a seat." The female waiter's trembling did not stop, her breathing was rapid, and her eyes emitted a bewildered light. Hawthorne blew out a puff of Turkish cigarette smoke and then said, "The situation tonight, is it somewhat similar to the situation when you brought that guy with the last name Zhu in the previous night?" The maid bowed her head in acquiescence. "But the previous night, you didn't come up to these 3 floors. That guy, he secretly invited you to enter the master's bedroom to prepare to steal the little treasure around your master's neck. What did he promise you as a reward? A diamond, right? There's one thing I don't understand. Why didn't you use the chloroform you prepared? Are you afraid? The other party still hasn't responded. Haha. You're called Feng, he's called Dragon. This name is too good and too coincidental. Perhaps it's because of this that you two have long had a romance. Do you understand this sentence?" The great detective spoke flippantly. The maid's 2 cheeks, red with added rouge, shame overwhelmed fear. Actually, the deductions of the great detective are mostly speculative, much like the tricks of astrologers. However, judging by the reactions of others, he has been lucky enough to guess correctly. Finally, Hawthorne looked at his watch and exclaimed, "Let's get down to business." He walked leisurely into the shrine, blowing a whistle in his mouth. He lifted the silk curtain and took out a flashlight from his bosom. The light shone on the left ear of the bronze statue. With some force, he turned the ear, which changed from vertical to horizontal. A peculiar small hole appeared in the area of the left earlobe. He took out an envelope from his pocket and carefully poured out a small object from it, which was a small dragon, exactly like the one owned by Li Ruelin, except it was made not of gold but of steel. Strange. Where did this hawthorn thing come from? Do you remember? On the previous day, he took Li Ruelin's little golden dragon into the bathroom and pressed it between two pieces of soap to get a mold, which was the source of the second little dragon. At this point, Hawthorne carefully assessed the ear holes of the bronze statue, then gingerly inserted the dragon tail into the small orifice and twisted it forcefully. Under a faint heartbeat, he harbored a fervent anticipation towards this bronze statue. However, after a while, the statue still remained impassive, showing no response whatsoever. He frowned, a little anxious, and then pondered for a moment. Suddenly, he jumped up again, twisted the right ear of the bronze statue, and discovered that there was also a hole under the right ear. After inspection, he put the head of the little iron dragon into the right hole, eagerly waiting. Perhaps it's due to its age? He fiddled with it for a while, then suddenly, there was a sound like a clock spring, clang, and the head of the bronze statue fell backwards. Below the neck of the bronze statue, a large cavity was revealed, and upon closer inspection, it was right at the neckline. This magical performance made the female servant standing aside forget her social status. She stood there dumbfounded. The source of decades-old secrets has been completely revealed. The clever Hawthorne discovered a bound book from the hollow belly of this bronze statue. Within this small book, he unearthed a historically significant grand secret. This book was rolled up into a scroll and tightly stuffed with cotton inside the abdomen of this bronze statue. The purpose, of course, is to prevent future generations from hearing the sound inside when moving the bronze statue, which shows the meticulous intentions behind it. This small book consists of 55 pages, all of which are written in neat and vigorous regular script. This is the actual handwriting of Li Dongjia, with the Li family's seal stamped on it. However, the book does not have a title. Hawthorne solemnly held the book, walked to a chair near the light, sat down quietly, and flipped through its contents. He read a part of it at the highest speed and discovered that the book described a meticulously detailed and grand naval construction plan. One characteristic of the book is, the plans he proposed all focus on practicality without any empty theorizing. Although these plans have completely lost their temporal value at present, if they could be implemented at that time, the tremendous effects they might have generated might be unimaginable to future generations. However, unfortunately, this incredible feat eventually vanished due to various reasons. Hawthorne sighed as he continued to read. The latter part of this book points out the weaknesses of Li Hongzhang's navy at that time, and he also indicates the inevitable defeat of it with sharp and incisive language, leaving no room for rebuttal. From this, one can glimpse Li Dongjia's farsightedness. However, this plan was not adopted by Li Zhongtong at that time, which may be one of the reasons. In the final part of the book, there is Li Dongjia's will to his descendants. This will repeatedly urges Li's descendants that if they can obtain suitable environment and opportunity, they should inherit his will and contribute this plan to the court, supervising its implementation. If none of his descendants can fulfill this request, then they should carefully seek for someone with foresight who can undertake this significant mission, and entrust this booklet to him solemnly. The last part of the will mentions that during Li's visit to Germany, for some reason, the Iron Chancellor of the country, Bismarck, presented him with a generous gift, which was 12 of the finest large diamonds. The will also states, if future generations obtain these diamonds, they cannot be treated as private property. They should wait until the country can implement his plans and then donate them as part of the construction. These diamonds are also hidden within the bronze statue. Hawthorne, seeing this, temporarily withdrew his gaze from the book and thought, at that time, the diamond hidden by the Li family might have inadvertently been seen by someone. The diamond could have become the legendary object of speculation at that time, and it all started from here. Hawthorne quickly skimmed through the entire book and will, which took quite some time. Finally, following the instructions in the will in the book, he effortlessly found a small silk box from the other part of the head of the bronze statue. Under the light, 12 rare diamonds fell into his palm, emitting a radiant brilliance like flowing water, shimmering and shimmering. The shrinking and anxious female attendant on the side stole a glance, her eyes bulging out. Finally, within 5 minutes, the amazing detective made the following actions. He restored the head of this bronze statue to its original state and hung the shrine curtain. They bow to this shrine, paying tribute to the great character of the person inside the shrine. Then, he bowed again and expressed his gratitude for the generous gift of the statue. Afterwards, with refined manners, he politely placed the small velvet box containing 12 huge diamonds into his pocket. He turned to the trembling maid and said, "Thank you, you've worked hard. Now, you should go rest. My reward for you is keeping your secret. If you trust me, I have a warning for you. Your secret lover behind the scenes is not a good person. If I have the chance, I'm prepared to give the same warning to your master." When the serving girl was driven back to her own bedroom with hesitating and uneasy steps, Hawthorne gently closed the door. He took the small book and flipped through a few pages again. He yawned and seemed a bit tired. He turned off the light and wrapped a tiger skin mat around himself, preparing to rest for a while, but soon he fell asleep. Waiting until the sky was clear, this clever friend slipped away quietly amidst the snoring of the group. The overnight incident left no trace in the room, and the serving girl Fengxia naturally wouldn't speak up. Here, the host was still waiting for the arrival of the great detective, who of course kept his promise. After 3 days, he sent a letter to Li Ruilin with only the simplest answer, saying, "That night, reaching out in the darkness with that ghost hand was none other than your good friend Zhu Long. His purpose was to steal your protective amulet." Along with the letter, a small book was also sent. Li Ruilin discovered that it was a writing by his great-grandfather, which he had never seen before. He didn't understand how this book ended up in the hands of that famous detective. Unfortunately, this petty bourgeoisie never took the time to read the contents of the book between dancing and playing cards, so he never knew the true purpose of the statue, diamond, and the cursed hand. So, this is the end of the whole story. The middle-aged man in the club wearing a Zhongshan suit. At this point, someone stood up and said, "What? Hawthorne didn't return those 12 diamonds to the person involved?" "I think that's unnecessary," replied the person in Zhongshan suit coldly. "What did you say? Are you suggesting that the great detective Hawthorne from China, with his personality, would stoop to such low tactics?" "Wait. I will defend Hawthorne." The middle-aged man extended his hand, saying, "That is not the real Hawthorne." "Not the real Hawthorne? Who is it?" "A professional thief." "A professional thief? How could he dare to take on Hawthorne's name and accept this?" "It was because of a chance encounter. That day, a professional thief, while there was no one in Hawthorne's office, intended to steal a certain document. Inadvertently, he answered the phone of the victim. Who is this clever thief after all?" "Me." The middle-aged man pointed to the tip of his own nose. "Who are you? What is your name?" "I am a decayed outcast, forgotten by the world, and I have also forgotten the world." "I have no name," the middle-aged man sighed, scratching his graying hair. Many confused gazes, all cast onto the same target. "You must ask, and I can also show you my trademark." This mysterious middle-aged man points to his own earlobe. Under the light, there is a bright red birthmark as red as blood, bursting like a Mars, catching everyone's attention. "Oh, it's you. Not bad, it's me." The orator laughed loudly and disappeared amidst the amazed and bustling crowd. Under the club's lights, there is a swirling mist of smoke. The intense smell of Turkish tobacco lingers in the noses of the crowd.